I'm Julia, and welcome back to Race to Win, the sailing podcast where we use 3D replays of actual races to discuss tactics, rules, and more. In today's podcast, we'll be chatting with Allan Terhune, the winner of the 2013 J22 World Championships, as well as 11 other North American championships, including the Lightning, Flying Scot, and Thistle. So, Allan, why don't you tell me a bit about this series that you're racing in and about the conditions on this day?
Yep, we're really excited to have the Quantum J70 Winter Series again with Davis Island Yacht Club in Tampa. This was the first event in December, which is the first of the three events. One in December, one in January, one in February. And, it was a really nice weekend. Unfortunately, we didn't get to sail on Sunday, but we had 4 good races on Saturday and 6 to 10 knots of breeze. And we're really excited to be able to partner with you guys here at Race Q's and be able to have the playback of the races and talk about it and give the people who sailed in the regatta just something more to learn from and have fun with. So we're really excited about it.
To kick things off, Allan and I jumped right in to talk about his general starting strategies that he uses for each race.
Yeah, I mean, our focus all the time is really what our game plan is and what side of the course we want to get to and, picking a favorite side. And we really just focus on a general area of the line, not a specific spot. And just try to find a place where we have space and have a nice hole and can go, straight for a while if we want to with speed and not really focus on exact locations, but just general areas we found has worked really well.
When I get to talk to professional sailors like Allan, who have won, it seems like everything, I always want to find out what's their flight checklist. What are the things that they go through in their mind when they're starting every race?
By the 4-minute period, we've kind of decided what section of the line we want to start in, and what we're really focusing on in the last, between 2 minutes and a minute to go is finding the area in the line where we think we have enough spacing, and then hopefully at somewhere between a minute 15 and a minute, we get on starboard tack, and then we're just fully working on how to accelerate and get into where we need to go.
Allan wasn't super pleased by his start. He said he got on starboard a little late, but he recovered really well and is actually ahead of Spring here, who goes on to later win the race. He decides to tack to the left, and I thought it was kind of an interesting decision and was wondering why he chose to separate from the boat that was just right there with him. Now, do you think you were headed back to the left because you thought it was more pressure on the left at that point, or you just think you're getting too far out? You're just hitting the corner.
A couple things. I mean, we felt like we were finally a little headed, and we had a good pressure line to go across. I mean, it was so shifty, going back and forth, puffy, streaky. We really just felt like our better move was, I hate using the term lay up, but kind of just, get back towards the middle of the course with everybody else and kind of live the fight another day. I think we were more worried, race 2 of the regatta, getting really far to one side. We'd made a good gain and didn't want to just blow it all up by, being too risky. In the end, I probably still would have done it again. I mean, I know hindsight's 20/20 and it obviously worked out for them really well. But, I look back and we still had a third in that race and it gave us a higher percentage of doing well.
So as far as the J70, why do you think it's been so successful?
I really think one of the things is just the setup of the boat, and that it's a 4-person boat. There's no weight limit, so you don't have to stress out about that, and it's really set up well to be able to sail with kids or spouses. I'm really lucky to sail with my wife. She goes with me a lot of the regattas, and there's tons of husband-wife teams, and you could sail with 2 couples. There's teams out there that are a full-on family, husband, wife, and kids. We've taken our kids out on Thursday nights a few times, and that's the beauty of it. You don't need 4 super athletes, rock stars, whatever you want to call it, to sail the boat. It really can be sailed by friends and family, and that's why I think people are flocking to it. It's really good for that.
I asked Allan if he had any top secret J70 downwind tips and tricks to share with us, and here's what he said.
I think the one thing downwind, people get a little bit afraid of jibing because they think they lose a lot of distance, but you can do it pretty well and not lose a ton of speed. I think the one thing to do is make sure when you go into it that you're not slow going into it. If you, especially in light air, if you're slow going into the jibe, it's pretty hard to come out of it going fast, if you know what I mean. So
absolutely. I pulled up a couple of Allan's jibes in the replay, and if you look at the color-coded GPS track, you can see he's clearly speeding up before each of them.
Yeah, I mean, anytime we think we're going to jibe, if we're talking about it, initially will make sure I put the bow up a degree or two just to give the boat a couple tenths of speed. So when we go into it, the boat has enough pace to get through it and not slow down too much.
I clicked on some of the stats for Allan's jibes, and this one was particularly impressive. He actually gained 2 seconds on this jibe. I mean, it's pretty good.
Yeah. For 6 knots of breeze or 10 knots of breeze, I'll take that any day of the week.
I wanted to get some specifics on Allan's sail trim, so I asked him about his main twist. And I also wondered if he was trimming his main or was somebody else doing it for him.
No, so I trim my own main. And the boat in this breeze especially is pretty main sheet sensitive. So the lighter it was, anytime the guys weren't hiking, I had the Traveler all the way up and the boom on center line. But as soon as we felt like the boat was really starting to go, and we had people even remotely, leaning up on the rail or even start to put the legs over the side, I'd go Traveler down a few inches and just trim harder on the main sheet, which would help, keep the bow up, and also would put some tension on the forestay because the rig was pretty loose. So by trimming on the main sheet, we could firm the forestay up a little bit by, just using the leech of the main to tension it up, and the boat performed a lot better that way. So it gave the boat the flexibility to change gears, because when it got light, I could go Traveler up, ease the main sheet, and the jib would get a little fuller because the headstay get loose. And as soon as we were rumbling, it would be Traveler down maybe 4 or 5 inches, and then trim the main sheet a couple, 2, 3, 4, 5 inches, depending on how loose it was, to really get the leech of the main firm to help keep the bow up and to tighten the forestay a little bit. So the main was pretty effective in that stuff of helping change gears.
On the last downwind leg, Allan gets into a really intense jibing duel for second place, and he gave us some more tips on downwind speed.
The one thing that I know our tactician Marcus did really well was just focusing on keeping us in lines of breeze, and it really paid. And we jibed in earlier a lot than other people, because I think they were more afraid of getting the bad air from the other boats, and just really should have focused more on just getting into where the puffs were. So we did a pretty good job of gaining because of that. So, and I mean, if you look, there's just some stages where we're going at pretty good clips. I mean, the speed's pretty high.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
anytime you see the yellow, we're going pretty well, and there was a bunch of yellows in there. So
Absolutely.
staying in the puffs downwind is even more important, because there aren't as many of them, because you're going with the breeze. So you're kind of following a puff for a long time, versus upwind where you're kind of passing. So there's more puffs, but they're shorter duration. So if you miss one upwind, it's kind of a, we'll get the next one next time. Whereas downwind, if you miss one, it's a long, painful process, because you're kind of going with the breeze, and it's kind of both of you going in the same direction. So
To close things out, Allan and I talked a bit about common mistakes he sees on J70s that he thinks really affect racing performance.
Any other tips you think that you could say about the J70 that like a J70 sailor might say, oh God, I've always wanted to know that, or I never
yeah,
could
I mean,
figure it out?
the one thing that I always tell people, especially in this light air, is really be aware of the jib sheet, because when it gets light, it can get over trimmed pretty quickly, and as soon as the puff comes and the sail gets loaded up, it can be under trimmed pretty quickly. So I know Marcus was moving our jib sheet all the time and just keeping the thing, trying to keep it at optimal trim. And when the conditions are changing like that, it's just constant adjustment. So any boat that was out there that had their jib just kind of trimmed to the mark and cleated probably didn't do very well, and they were struggling upwind. And a lot of it was just the jib is the gas pedal, and if you adjust it and keep it going, the boat performed 1,000 times better.
So that's all that we have for today on this podcast. Allan, I just want to say thanks again so much for your time. And remember, that app is free. You can get it at racecues.com. And I'll see you next time.
If you enjoyed this podcast, you can find more on our website, www.racecues.com/podcast.